From kidnappings and torture to shootouts and serial killers, we're breaking down why Birmingham, Alabama is one of the most brutal cities in the world. Lil Heat was one of the hottest rappers in Birmingham, but making it out of the city isn't easy, and Lil Heat allegedly got murdered by his own homies right before he hit the mainstream. Lil Heat came up in the trenches and started getting arrested when he was 13 years old, but he didn't want to live like that forever. Around 2019, he hopped in the booth and started dropping music, and in 2020, he popped off like crazy with the track 007. Lil Heat got co-signs from huge artists like Young Thug and Gucci Mane, and all the buzz got him a deal with Cinematic Music Group. But while Lil Heat was starting to make some noise in the industry, he had beef in Birmingham that was about to get him shot. When Lil Heat started dropping tracks, he was tied with another Birmingham rapper named Ray World De Niro. They had some music together and were both putting on for the city. But Ray World De Niro was allegedly one of the most dangerous dudes in Birmingham. Some sources claim he caught over 10 bodies, and a lot of people think he was involved with Lil Heat getting shot too. According to rumors, Lil Heat and Ray World De Niro fell out because De Niro started hooking up with Lil Heat's ex. Then in 2022, Lil Heat was driving around in Birmingham when someone started shooting up his whip. Lil Heat got hit a few times and crashed, and he watched his homie die right in front of him. Rumors say that Ray World De Niro and his crew were involved with the situation, but nobody was ever booked for it. Lil Heat didn't let the shooting slow him down though, and he clapped back in the booth while his arm was still in the sling and dissed De Niro when he rapped, "That hoe you call your BM used to be my bobblehead." And that's his big homie chain, them his big homie racks. Knowing after he take that photo, he gotta give that paper back. Lil Heat thought he got snaked by his own homies, and on the same track he said, "They pulled an inside job. I watched my nigga die outside, and I put the blame on me cause all I had to do was drive. And let a nigga drop they nuts and rap, I bet they mamas cry. Niggas know we ain't getting even. What the fuck is eye for eye?" De Niro was sending shots too, and Lil Heat's fan wanted him to get out of the city before it was too late. 1 week after Lil Heat got shot and his homie died, Lil Heat took another loss when his cousin 41st AJ was shot and killed at a gas station. Lil Heat and 41st AJ were both affiliated with a crew called 420, and that's why Ray World De Niro dropped the track 420 Smoke Session and dissed him. De Niro ripped a set that beef with 420 called H2K, aka Hard to Kill, and De Niro was self-snitching after 41st AJ got killed. According to rumors, the killing started when Ray World De Niro murdered 41st AJ's cousin, Jash Bizzle. 41st AJ allegedly clapped back and killed De Niro's homie Trigger, and that's why Ray World De Niro allegedly pulled the trigger on 41st AJ. Lil Heat knew that he couldn't trust anybody around him, and his plan was to move out to Atlanta and focus on music. But instead of taking the money he made from Cinematic Music Group and leaving Birmingham, Lil Heat stuck around and it cost him his life. In May 2023, Lil Heat was ambushed by some shooters in the middle of the day. The police think he got set up, and the shooters dumped over 20 shots at Lil Heat. The paramedics found him bleeding out on the street, and they rushed him to the hospital to save him. Lil Heat lived for another 6 weeks in the hospital, but the gunshots did too much damage to recover from, and he tragically didn't make it out alive. Nobody was ever booked for pulling the trigger on Lil Heat, but now Ray World De Niro was fighting 3 other murder cases, and a lot of people think he was involved with the Lil Heat hit too. Some sources claim Ray World De Niro caught over 10 bodies, but that's still not even close to what a dude named Damien McDaniel did in Birmingham. 2024 is one of the most violent years in Birmingham history, with 151 people getting killed. And what makes the situation even crazier is that Damien McDaniel was allegedly involved with 30% of the murders that year. But Damien McDaniel's killing spree started way before that. Back in 2019, Damien McDaniel got hit with 2 attempted murder charges after he shot up somebody's whip. He pleaded guilty, and the judge handed down a 15-year sentence in April 2023. But 13 years of the sentence were suspended, so Damien McDaniel was back out on the streets right after the trial ended. And in July 2023, Damien McDaniel shot 2 firefighters and killed one of them. Nobody knows why Damien wanted to kill the firefighters, but a few months later, he allegedly murdered a woman named Mia Nixon outside of her crib. The cops had no idea back then that the murders were connected, but Damien's brutal killing spree was just getting started. In April 2024, Damien allegedly caught a dude named Anthony Love Jr. while he was clocking out from his job at UPS. Killing firefighters and mailmen is wild, but the cops think that somebody actually paid Damien to kill Anthony Love Jr. A couple months after Anthony Love Jr. got killed, Damien was chilling at a birthday party in a Birmingham club and a fight broke out. After the fight, Damien allegedly went outside to get his gun, and that's when the killing started. Damien started shooting into the club, and when he was finished, there were 4 people dead and at least 10 more who got shot and survived. Damien McDaniel wasn't finished yet though, and a month after the shooting at the club, He allegedly killed another dude named Charlie Moore inside his house. Some of the murders were allegedly paid hits, but a lot of people think Damien McDaniel was a straight-up serial killer, and he was about to catch 6 bodies in 4 days. On September 19th, Damien allegedly killed Anniah Brown at a bar. Then 2 days later, he pulled up to a hookah lounge on Magnolia Avenue and started shooting. Damien allegedly had at least one more shooter with him, and they killed 4 people and hit 17 more. Then the very next day, Damien slid into Southeast Lake Community in Birmingham and killed a dude named Jamarcus McIntyre and shot 2 others. The cops finally booked Damien McDaniel a month after the second club shooting, and in 2025, they were still finding out about more murders he committed. Damien McDaniel allegedly had gang ties, but if you mess around in Birmingham, you might run into the most brutal cartel in the world. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, aka CJNG, is the biggest cartel in Mexico, and they have heavy ties to Birmingham. CJNG is known for using brutal violence, and some reports claim that they actually make their members eat humans while they're going through training. Crossing the cartel is basically a death sentence, and in 2023, the feds found out that CJNG was moving a ton of fentanyl through Birmingham. The feds booked 9 CJNG members for the drug ring, and one of them was already serving multiple life sentences because he killed 5 people who owed money to the cartel. Even if you don't have ties to the streets or the cartels, Birmingham is one of the most dangerous places in America, and what happened to a woman named Mahogany Jackson proved that the violence down there is on a whole different level. In February 2024, Mahogany Jackson texted her mom and said she had been kidnapped and needed help. And just a few hours later, somebody found her on the side of the road with a bullet in her head. Mahogany Jackson had been tortured before somebody shot her in the head, and they filmed the whole thing. 8 people ended up getting booked for the murder, and some cops in Birmingham said it's the most brutal death they've ever seen. And what makes it even worse is that Mahogany Jackson knew the people who killed her. According to some of the suspects, it all started over a gun that got stolen. Mahogany Jackson allegedly took a strap from somebody, so they kidnapped her and tortured her with their crew. At some point, Mahogany Jackson was able to get her phone and text her mom, and her mom called the police. The murderers caught Mahogany Jackson using the phone though, and that's allegedly when they decided to kill her instead of just torturing her. Mahogany had just told her mom where she was at, but by the time the cops got there, it was already too late, and her dead body was found a couple hours later. Mahogany Jackson's case shocked all of the local cops, but what happened to Anniah Blanchard made headlines everywhere. In 2019, Anniah Blanchard went missing after she told her roommate that she was going out with a dude she just met. Her roommate didn't think it was weird at first, but when Anniah didn't come back home the next day, the cops got involved with the situation. They started tracking Anniah Blanchard down, and the last time she was seen was at a gas station. She left the gas station in her whip with a dude named Ibrahim Yazid, and later the cops found her and a bunch of Anniah's blood inside. Ibrahim had tried to clean it, but there were bullet holes in the whip and DNA all over the place. The cops booked Ibrahim, and it turns out he was one of the most brutal dudes in the city. Back in 2012, he tried to kill 2 cops, and in 2018, he murdered a dude named Stephen Hambry and shot a woman in the face. And just a few months before he killed Anniah Blanchard, Ibrahim and his homies almost beat a 77-year-old man to death while they were robbing him. Most of the violence going down in Birmingham happens in poor neighborhoods, but being rich doesn't mean you're safe either. And one time, a millionaire got kidnapped, and the kidnappers even brought their kids on the crash out. In September 2020, Matthew Burke and his girlfriend Tabitha Hodges broke into a house in Birmingham where a 75-year-old millionaire named Elton Stevens was living. They got to the house around 2 in the morning, stole Elton's Maserati, and drove back to their own house to show the whip off to their kids. Elton Stevens was still asleep at that point, but then Matthew Burke woke him up, and that's when the situation got weird. The whole thing was recorded on Elton Stevens' phone, and Matthew Burke started off by saying that he had bought the house that Elton Stevens was living in. Matthew Burke and Tabitha Hodges had their kids with them in the house, and they were telling the kids that Elton Stevens was going to give them a farm to live on. Then they took Elton Stevens back to their own crib, but first they stopped at a barbecue spot to get lunch. Elton tried to jump out of the whip, but Matthew Burke pulled him back in and took off. After they got to Matthew and Tabitha's house, they forced Elton to transfer $250K to their bank account, and then they took Elton to his house and dropped him off like nothing happened. The cops solved the case immediately because Matthew and Tabitha might be the dumbest criminals in Birmingham, and now they're both in prison for over a decade. Kidnapping a 75-year-old dude is wild, but sometimes the old men in Birmingham are the most dangerous, like a 70-year-old who killed 3 people at a church in 2022. On June 16, 2022, Robert Smith walked into a church that was hosting a potluck dinner and started shooting. He killed 3 people off the jump and would have murdered even more. But then a 79-year-old dude named James Musgrove hit Robert Smith in the head with a chair and took his gun away. Some hoods in Birmingham are so violent that the cops tell people they shouldn't even stop for gas. And in 2024, a wild shootout went down at a gas station on the 800 block of 3rd Avenue West. Nobody knows what sparked the situation, but shooters started busting at the gas station and bullets were flying in every direction. Over 150 shots went off and hit cars, buildings, and people. One dude ended up dead, and at least 6 more got shot and survived. Birmingham is getting more deadly every year, and some locals say it's because guns are so cheap and easy to get. According to some sources, you can get a Glock with a switch for $120. Triggerman DP is a rapper from the city, and he said that switches changed everything.
Shit, them switches got to the city.
Them switches?
Yeah.
Switches fucked up a lot of shit, man.
Yeah.
All cities, really.
Real shit.
What makes the story even crazier is that in 2022, over 100 shots went off at the same gas station. A dude named Davion Hickley was killed that time, and his ops said they were going to shoot up the church where his funeral was too. The cops were posted up at the church to provide security for the funeral, but Davion Hickley's ops still showed up and tried to run over some of the cops who were there. Birmingham has one of the highest murder rates in America, but one of the most shocking deaths in the city was when a millionaire faked his own murder and actually killed himself. Major Bashinsky was a lawyer in Birmingham, but he was also one of the most powerful dudes in the state. His family owned a chip company called Golden Enterprises that was making over $100 million a year, and that's why everybody was shocked when Major Bashinsky's body was found floating in a golf course pond. Major's hands were tied behind his back, and there was tape over his mouth, and there was a letter in his pocket that called Golden Enterprises vampires who abused their workers. At first, everyone thought Major had been killed by someone who worked at the chip company, but the truth was way weirder. After the autopsy was finished, the coroner said that Major had taped his own mouth shut and shot himself in the head. Major's hands were tied too, but the rope was loose and wouldn't have stopped him from pulling the trigger. Nobody knows why Major tried to make his own suicide look like a murder, and it's still one of the weirdest deaths in Birmingham's history.